Happy Hump Day, hockey fans. It's a Wednesday edition of Daily Faceoff Live, coming to you live on the DFO YouTube, where we're looking for your inbox questions. I see two of them in there already, both about the Buffalo Sabres, and hand up, I'm sick of talking about the Buffalo Sabres, so mix it up a little bit for us. Tyler Yaremchuk and Carter Hutton with you. The show, as always, is a presentation of Bet365. Download the app today. Use the code NATION, whatever the moment. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Like, Hutz, I don't know how many times we can sit here on the show and be like, yes, the Sabres stink, and if they keep stinking, they're going to trade people. Like, there's the answer.
I know it is. It is what it is, right? It's so funny for me because it's 3 games into the season. But like as Jeff Merrick talked about in his show yesterday, it's 14 years of buildup, right? So I feel for them. This is a lot. I was in it for 3 years. And man, we had a 10-game winning streak at one point. And then I remember first in the league. And then after that, it just crashed down. And it's a hard place to be right now. I feel for those guys.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You can see when Tage Thompson does his media avails that it's affecting that locker room. They need a win tonight. And maybe someone will get bold and take them in our betting challenge a little bit later. Probably not. We're going to be joined by Steve Peters for our big segment today. But let's kick things off with another struggling team that plays in the state of New York, and that is the New York Rangers. Huts. The big story is that they've been shut out in 3 straight home games, all 3 of their home games to start the year. Last night, I'll be honest, watching that one against the Oilers, they very easily could have had 3 or 4, but it was a combination of some tough luck and a very good Stuart Skinner. Before we give our take, Johnny Lazarus was in the Oilers locker room and asked Stuart Skinner about how this Rangers team was looking from the opposing goalie's perspective.
In this building, I mean, I'm sure you knew that going in, but when a team's struggling to score, can you tell as a goalie if they're gripping the sticks a little bit too tight, or what are you seeing out there as a goalie?
To be honest, I didn't know. Calvin told me that right after the game, and I was honestly pretty shocked because of how they did play. I don't think you looking at them, I wouldn't imagine you're saying that they're snake bitten or that. I mean, maybe they're snake bitten, but they made some amazing plays. They got some really good chances. They were fighting, they were battling. I don't think there's really much to say. I don't know how the other 2 games went, but for this game again, like just the way that we played all together, all 6 guys on the ice just really helped keep the puck out.
Huts, early season slump, or is this a concerning sign for the Rangers offense?
I think a bit of both, truthfully, Ty. I think it's a bit concerning, right? When you're starting at home, and game 1 was the one for me that I think was the most disappointing game, that Pens game. It just felt like a lackluster effort when it's your home opener, and just the lack of energy and just getting to those tough areas where when I look at the game against Washington, it was the lone game on the Sunday. I thought Charlie Lindgren was very good. I thought they created a lot of chances. It was in tight areas. And we look at like the shot map. It was in those tough areas. And again, last night, not to undermine Stuart Skinner like Johnny Lazarus kind of did with his question there, being like, they've been shut out. You got a shutout. You're kind of supposedly supposed to get one. But that being said, it's a tough challenge. And I agree with Skinner's answer in the sense of you're kind of oblivious to it when you're playing in the NHL. You're just worried about yourself and what you can control, right? And that's something that's easier said than done, being a goalie, is you can't control whether you get 10 shots, you get 40 shots. And you can tell Skinner was just facing what came at him. And I thought last night he did a very good job of being a calming factor, and that game could easily have turned on its ear. So one thing positive, I guess, you can take away from the Rangers is they're close and they're not really giving up a ton. And Shesterkin has been very good, but they got to break through here. I don't know if it's a greasy goal or what it is. They got to find a way to break this slump here.
Yeah, I think the reason I'm going to lean more towards it's just an early season slump and not really a sign of like a weak forward group. They do have 10 goals in their 2 road games. Their expected goals for, according to Natural Stat Trick, in every one of those home games is above 2.7, above 3 in a couple of them, double digits and high danger shot attempts in each of those games. Like, they're doing enough. They're generating. Yesterday, you kind of had all 4 lines getting some quality looks on Skinner. You just didn't score. Like, to me, I think there's other teams who should actually be more concerned. And maybe we can quickly touch on the Ottawa Senators are 1-2 to start the year. They have 8 goals in 3 games, and they're not going to have Brady Tkachuk for at least the next month. I think someone was saying he's flying to New York to see a hand specialist. So, I mean, if I'm a Sens fan, I'm worried. If I'm a Rangers fan, I'm going, we got a couple of wins. Shesterkin's look good. The goals will come.
Yeah, it is concerning in a sense too, but I also feel like at times it's a rally cry too, right? Where you lose your captain, you lose a pivotal piece to your team. You rally around that, you find that. And this is a team for me when I think about Ottawa and, I guess maybe what they've been through in that rebuild, and now they're at a point where, there is more expectations on them. I look back to last year, I think, which is a galvanizing moment for them was during that World Junior where they had to go on that 11-day road trip, 9 games, and that pretty much sealed their chance to make the playoff. And that was big. And that was where everyone thought they wouldn't be able to do that. So again, I think there's maturity in that room. I think with Claude Giroux and their leadership group and the guys that are there, they can rally around this, but it's definitely going to be a big hole to fill without Brady Tkachuk moving forward.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit of Senators in our inner and outer circle Stanley Cup contenders. So let's move on to that, and we'll start with who we're deeming the big dogs, the teams that we feel are in the inner circle when it comes to being a Stanley Cup contender. And we know parity is high in the league, which is why I kind of like this exercise. Who are the teams that you think have legit chances? Who are the teams that, hey, if things break right, maybe they could be a cup contender? So Bet365 has the Carolina Hurricanes as the odds-on favorite, the Canes and Oilers tied as the odds-on favorites to win the Stanley Cup. But they do have 6 teams who are plus 1,000 or shorter in terms of the odds. Huts, I'll give you, or I'll start with mine. My inner circle, I do have 6 teams in there. I like Carolina. I like Florida out east. And then I have 4 teams from the west. I think Dallas, Colorado, Edmonton, and Vegas are all true, authentic inner circle Stanley Cup contenders. Who do you have as your inner circle?
For me, I had some of the same, but I didn't really think it was very fair because you got to go first, so I had to follow you here on this one, guys. But so I have Florida, Dallas, Colorado, Edmonton, Vegas, and then the different one I had was Toronto. I just think Toronto's at a point with Craig Berube and where he's at. I think that he can get this team to play a little bit of heavier brand of hockey. I like the adding of Dakota Joshua. I like the adding of Nicholas Waugh. And I just think there is a little bit more of a back end with their goalie depth. So it is a tricky argument, right? You can make so many cases for each team, but I bumped Carolina out to the outside. And why? It's because it's kind of the team that I guess they just always leave me wanting more come playoff time, right? And again, they have a lot of pieces. They're going to be competitive. They're going to create a lot of shots. And yes, I wouldn't be surprised we see them back in the Eastern Conference Final because of what they're going to face through the Metro Division. My worry is them just, if we're going to call them legit cup contenders, I just worry about that superstar talent pushing them over top, Ty.
Yeah, and I mean, encouraging. They got Nick Ehlers over the offseason. That could help. I still like their forward group. The reason I went with them inner versus outer, and I left Toronto in my outer, Toronto in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs, unless they're a wild card team, I guess, but they're in all likelihood going to have to go through 1 or 2 of Florida and Tampa Bay, and Montreal could be a factor this season. I have them as one of my outers as well. That path for Toronto is tough, and also, I mean, I want to see them play a little bit more without Mitch Marner. I want to have a little bit more, I want to be a little bit more sure that offense is going to be fine. Again, playoffs were a different argument with Marner and the Maple Leafs, but in the regular season, I just want to see a little bit from the Leafs first versus the Canes. I mean, I'm sitting there going, they should be able to walk through that division for the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. Again, I don't think there's another authentic or even outer circle cup contender in their division. So just by default, it's like they're clearly the best team in their division in my eyes. So they should be an inner circle one. We were pretty much all aligned on the West, which I found interesting. The only difference, I guess, being that I had St. Louis I had St. Louis as an outer, and you had Minnesota as an outer. What do you like more about the Wild compared to the Blues?
I just think their depth. I like their forward depth and where they're at. And then I think the X factor for me, not that Jordan Binnington isn't the X factor. I think he's a great goalie in 7-game series, but I think Philip Gustafson's ready to have a coming out party. I think he is at a point in his career where there's maturity mixed with experience, mixed with security of his contract. And this is a team that is, I guess, at points been disappointing. They've gotten the playoffs with good teams and always seem to fall short. And I think it's just now with the hype around the Kaprizov contract and this Matt Boldy, what he brings to the table, Brock Faber, there's so many good pieces there. I just look for them to be that team that is close. But again, as we start to break down divisions, there's going to be no easy matchups for the Minnesota Wild when you look at that division. And again, you can make this conversation, about 1 versus 8 or staying in your division. No matter where you finish, it's going to be a tough first round matchup.
Yeah, for me, again, we had the conversation yesterday. The Blues were seconds away from going to the second round of the playoffs, and you punch your ticket through round 1. Who knows what could have happened or how things could have played out if they could have gotten a little bit healthier as well. So I like St. Louis. Again, the margin is close. As we turn our attention a little bit more to our outer circles, Pat, if you could maybe flash up Huts again for me. So I have Montreal you had Ottawa in yours, and you decided to leave the Canadians out of it. So I guess I'll just keep kind of throwing you the similar question here. Like, I look at Montreal, and there is so much upside in that forward group. That blue line I really like, and again, with some young pieces, I see enough reason to believe that Montreal could get better as the year goes on. And if you're going to get better as the year goes on, maybe you just peak at the right time. What do you like more about the Ottawa Senators?
Well, it's one of those factors for me. I just think a little bit deeper, and I like Linus Ullmark. I'm a big fan of that. I think the Montreal Canadiens are very good, but I think at times last year during that run, they were so one-dimensional with their scoring, with that one line being their powerhouse. And now I think you're not catching anybody off guard. So my only concern with Montreal, not that I don't think Montreal is there and close, people, this is tough decisions. We're flipping coins on teams, is the fact that you're not really fooling anybody this year. Right? Like a lot of times with youth, with energy, you come in and you don't get the same amount of respect as you would with a team like Florida, with a team like Tampa that has that traditional offensive powerhouse, where now you're going to deal with tougher matchups, right? You're going to be hitting it head on. And I think that's something Montreal is going to have to deal with while managing expectations, because is there another team in the NHL right now that has more hype around them than the Montreal Canadiens? I can't imagine what that market is right now. So that's my concern. Where when I look at the Ottawa Senators, I do think there is that factor. Obviously, the Brady Tkachuk injury is an issue. As long as he's healthy moving forward, I think there's a little more grit to get them to grind in and kind of be in that outer circle for me.
Are we being disrespectful to the Winnipeg Jets? I guess that's kind of the last one I wanted to touch on, because, we include Colorado, we include Dallas. Dallas has been to back-to-back Western Conference Finals, but this is the Jets team that had 110 points in the regular season last year. They lost Steelers. Is that enough of a reason to move them out of that category when Dallas and Colorado are? I mean, their blue line is still relatively good. I don't know. Why do we not give the Jets the same respect that we give some of those other teams?
Well, because I think they haven't really earned it in the sense of playoff success, right? And I feel like there is a little bit of the black cloud. And I think for me, going out on a limb, and as I move Toronto into that inner circle, it's a very similar situation of, yes, it's almost a formality at this point. You're going to get in the playoffs where you're going to be. But when we're talking about legit contenders with Hellebuck's lack of playoff success, and I guess maybe Ehlers being gone and their star factor, are they going to be able to really make a difference when we look in that division? We look at Dallas, we look at Colorado. It still feels like, regular season points aside, the Jets are still a big step below. So I do think there's potential for them to win the Cup. And again, this is just how it works with the parity in NHL. You can make an argument for everybody, but someone's got to be in the inner and someone's got to be in the outer tie.
Yeah, it's interesting the way Winnipeg kind of represents the tier drop-off in the Central, right? Everyone kind of points to Colorado and Dallas, and okay, those are the big dogs. And then Winnipeg's just kind of there in the middle, and then you get to the Wild and the Mammoth, I guess, and the Blues, obviously, as well. And that's where we're going to go with our big segment today. And Steve Peters. Steve Peters is brought to you by Uber Eats, enabling fans to maximize their fandom all season long with exclusive game day deals on the app. From game day eats to paper plates if you're hosting, to all the ingredients you need to make your favorite game day dip. Before, during, or after the game, Uber Eats is assisting every fan's hockey experience all season long. Always a pleasure to welcome Steve Peters to the show. And Steve, let's kick things off with a little bit of talk about the Utah Mammoth. They were everybody's sexy playoff pick this year, and you want to talk about offenses that are maybe struggling a little bit. Just 5 goals in 3 games for them. Despite those offensive struggles, though, it feels like they found something with that young top line.
Yeah, definitely. This is a team that is really struggling to score. Got to go to their top end guys that are causing that. Clayton Keller has no goals through 3. That hasn't happened in his career since 2019. So there is some struggle from those top guys. But like you said, what they've talked about in Utah for a long time is how bright this future is. And with the Cooley, Gunther, Peterka line, man, that line is exciting. When they're on the ice, they are a threat to score. They've got 4 goals. The rest of the forwards in Utah have one goal. They need to find some secondary scoring if this team is going to be a team that can compete for a playoffs. Right now, they're 31st in the National Hockey League on goals for per game, and they are struggling to create. They're 26th. So when you look at their metrics, they're just not there. The one bright spot right now is Karel has been lights out. So that's been able to help their goals against average.
For obviously Karel Vejmelka, he was a guy that I've seen firsthand. Now, you look at some of the guys that came over from Arizona, right? When you talk about Vejmelka, obviously having a stint there. And then you look at the depth guys with Lawson Krause, with Nick Schmaltz, with Clayton Keller. These guys have been there a long time. How long is it status quo there with new ownership and Bill Armstrong until they start to make, like, is there more moves coming? Because, Bill Armstrong, obviously the Sergachev deal, the JJ Peterka, he's not shy on making big deals.
Yeah, I think it's coming. And one of those players you got to look at on the front end with Nick Schmaltz. It's a guy you mentioned. He's got no goals through the first 3 games. He's a guy that's a tweener for me. When he's good, Nick Schmaltz is extremely good. He's a high-end skilled guy that has a lot of tools. Consistency has been a problem. And when you look at his contract situation, he's a guy, he's up at the end of the year. And it's a UFA contract that I think they can move that $6 million, $5.8 million off their books. Would not be surprised if you see Nick Schmaltz being talked about a lot more as we get closer to the trade deadline. So yeah, you're going to see some moves. There's pressure here by Bill Armstrong to get to the playoffs now. Ownership has given them some patience, and they're through the rebuild, and now you're starting to see these young players starting to play. Now it's, you got to make the playoffs. So now it's those key moves to fill out the roster. Lawson Krause is a guy that, is he going to be on the move? I think you're going to see more of that from Utah as the season goes on.
What would you look for them to add, though? Like, I mean, is it as simple as they need to get more scoring into that lineup?
It is. And we've talked about this thing in Utah for a very long time, is their center depth. And you talked about right now, Barrett Hayton is centering their number 1 line. Barrett Hayton, like the kid, like the player, but on a good team, Barrett Hayton's a number 3. And he's not a number 1 center in the league. Logan Cooley is coming there, but you look at his faceoff numbers, he's 24%. Like, it's rotten. So up the middle, Jack McBain has been good. He's been a steady 2-way centerman, but they need some more depth up the middle of the ice. They've talked about it in Arizona since Jeremy Roenick, that they needed more depth through the middle of the ice. So that's something they've got to get, and they've got to address quickly if this team is going to be in the playoffs anytime in the next few years.
Yeah, it's interesting. You're only that sort of under the radar team for so long until the pressure really, really starts to build, and you need to take a step forward. I want to pivot a little bit here and talk about the Minnesota Wild. Kirill Kaprizov signs that big extension, and everyone goes, "Oh, he's setting the market. Every star now is going to be looking at that." And then what ends up happening is McDavid takes less money, and Hutton takes less money, apparently. And then a bunch of fan bases are sitting there going like, well, why was Kaprizov so greedy? Why did the Wild pay him? But I think if you were to watch this team on the ice this year, you see why the Minnesota Wild just kind of, at the end of the day, said, we got to give this guy his money. We need to keep him in the mix.
Yeah, without question, he's been the best player. And arguably right now, he's one of those guys that you'd have to say is the MVP 3 or 4 games into the season, maybe a shade early. But when you look at the Minnesota Wild and what they've done, very similar to Utah, and it's their top end guys. Like, it's Boldy, Rossi, and Kaprizov. They've got 9 goals. The rest of the team, the rest of the forwards on the Minnesota Wild have 3, and Hartman's got 2 of them. The biggest issue for the Minnesota Wild right now is they're not scoring 5-on-5. Through their 4 games, they have 4 5-on-5 goals, which puts them 29th in the National Hockey League on 5-on-5 goals. Conversely, they're number 1 on the power play. They have 21 opportunities. They've scored 10 goals, almost at a 50% clip. Unheard of. That can't be sustainable. They're going to have to find a way to score 5-on-5. They're going to find a way to score beyond that Kaprizov line. And if they don't, this is a team that you talk about being a bubble team in the Western Conference. There's a concern, and not just now, but going forward with that $17 million contract. It's great to have a great top line, but you've got to have that depth. And you look to the Oilers a few years ago, you talk about McDavid and Draisaitl and how they were just a 2-man group. Now they have depth in Edmonton, and now they're competing for a Stanley Cup. Minnesota right now could find themselves a year or two from now being very, very top-heavy, and it's hard to compete for a Stanley Cup when you're that top-heavy.
It is, right? When you start thinking about matchups, and you've seen this firsthand, how you prepare to face teams, you're not really fooling anybody. Something I touched on earlier when we were talking about teams on the inner and outer. But for Minnesota, for Bill Guerin, where do you go from here? Like, what is the leash like? This is a Minnesota team that's had good teams. They haven't had that playoff success in a state that is dying to get somewhere in the NHL.
Yeah, this is hard. And Billy Guerin's under the microscope. You finally get rid of the Suter and Parisi contracts, and you go, okay, they've got all this money to play with. And a few weeks later, it's all gone. all gone with one player. There's a concern in Minnesota, and I think one of those places, the state of hockey, there is a lot of pressure to win. I know they're not on that big national marketplace, but locally, there's a lot of pressure on this team, and there's a lot of pressure on Billy Guerin. And right now, you talked about it, Hutz. You talked about their goaltending. Gustafson's got to have a great year, and last year he was one of the biggest reasons this team got themselves into the playoffs. Right now, he starts the season with a shutout, but he's given up 9 over his last 2. It's a concern. This is a team that hasn't defended as well. They're 26th in goals against 4 games in. They're 30th on the penalty kill 4 games in. There's a concern at their ability to defend and stop the play on the penalty kill. So those 2 metrics are a big problem. I think there's so much pressure on the Minnesota Wild to perform, and right now they're going to have to get their depth scoring under control because right now, if it is just Kaprizov, heck of a player, leads this club, but it's got to be more than him and Boldy if this team's going to be in the playoff race.
Again, this is always that fine line time of the year where it's like, don't want to be freaking out too hard because we're legitimately 8 days into this thing. But you kind of outlined some of those numbers with Minnesota, and like if you're barely competing, if you're barely winning games right now, when you're getting that production from the top line, like Kaprizov's not going to be averaging 2 points per game for the entire season. Like when he cools off, are the losses just going to start piling up? So I like that you point out some reasons to be, to be legitimately raising an eyebrow at them. Is there any other team in the league, I'll put you on the spot with this one, that's also in that camp where you're like, hey, it might be 3 or 4 games, but I am not liking what I'm seeing?
You know, what's interesting, there's a tale of 2 teams right now. It's the LA Kings. The LA Kings are a team that I loved coming into this season. I thought they were a team that could have propelled themselves into the second round with a little bit, a few different pucks bouncing the other way against the Edmonton Oilers. I don't think they've looked great. I don't think they're playing with pace. I think you look at what they did on the back end with Ceci and Dumoulin is costing them right now. It's a team that wanted to play with more pace from the back end. They got slower. They got older. And you look at the numbers of those 2 defensemen, they're incredibly disappointing when those 2 guys are on the ice. And so I think that's a team that you know, if you want to make a new team get into the playoffs, somebody's got to fall out. And right now, one of those teams in the way too early prediction mark is the LA Kings. And I do expect more from the LA Kings. And the other in the East is Tampa Bay. I love Tampa Bay. I thought it's a team that could have competed for a cup a season ago. They've got the scoring power. They can defend, and they've got one of the best goaltenders in the league. And they're struggling. And you look at the way Cooper is behind that bench right now, and he's looking frustrated. He's looking angry. And this is a team that has 1 regulation win right now. And I know it's only 4 games, and there's 78 to go. But this is a team that's got to right their ship quickly, because this is a team with incredibly high expectations. So that's one team from each conference that I think you need to start playing better.
Be interesting to see. Oh, go ahead, Utz.
No, I guess my point with the earlier thing is forecasting these divisions are so tough too, right? It feels like when we talk about the LA Kings and we talk about Tampa Bay, it's like that inevitable roadblock that they're going to hit. They're going to hit Edmonton. Yep. They're going to hit Vegas. It just seems like for these teams, it's almost to the point where just getting in is kind of where you're at because of what's coming in the parity in the league and the superstar teams.
And that's what you look at too. You look at those different conferences, and those different divisions right now, and it's the teams we expected in the West: Colorado, Dallas, Vegas, Edmonton. No regulation losses between the 4 of them. Like this Western Conference is a gauntlet. I can't imagine trying to look at this going, okay, we got to get through these teams to get to the Western Finals. Like this is going to be incredibly tough. And I think in the East, you always talk about Florida. And I know Florida, I'm not sure what they're going to be. I tell you, by playoff time, they're going to be the Florida Panthers because that's who they are. The surprise for me right now is how well the Carolina Hurricanes are playing. Like, they're not just playing good. They are dominating. So I think the East is the same. You've got these gauntlets you got to go through. It's just getting in. And I know we're 4 games in, and 78 games from now, we may be saying the LA Kings are the best team in hockey with the best power play in the league. So we have a long way to go. But these early stumbles can tell a lot about a team and where they're going to be 10 games in, 20 games in, because 20 games isn't that far away. And you're going to be looking at the bottom, looking up and going, uh-oh, like we got a lot of ground to make up. So these teams are going to have to start playing a little bit better hockey as this next 5-10 games get going.
Petey, appreciate it as always, and we'll chat with you again next Wednesday.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.
I was looking at that Kings blue line right at the end there. I pulled up their numbers, and listen, expected goals can be a bit of a flawed stat, but the numbers of, so they've had 6 defensemen play games this year. They've used the same 6 in every game, I should say. Brant Clark, 67% expected goals for. Edmondson, 58. Anderson, 52. Doughty, 52. Dumoulin and Ceci, 37 and 35%. Like, at a time when the league is moving towards puck-moving defensemen and, in a simple way, the best offense or the best defense is a good offense. Like, just get the puck out of your zone, play at the other end. Like, Ken Holland went with big, slow defensemen who don't move the puck well. And I think it's going to bite them in the ass.
I think at times some extra stats can be a bit, confusing, but like usually when there's outliers on a team over time, it continually, there's something there, right? There's usually something there. If there's smoke, there's fire. And again, the way that defensemen can move now, you look at these younger guys that can move and have mobility with a goalie. For me, in my sense, like I think Darcy Kemper needs to be insulated. He doesn't move that well laterally. So having slower D-mans, especially when you're playing in a tough division that travels east-west so much, they're going to have their hands full moving forward. But they have a solid hockey team. Again, I just don't know how they get through the West.
Let me throw you an Ask DFO, because this was going around on Twitter or X.com or whatever. There was kind of a loose report being thrown around, and I don't even remember who sent it, but there's always the chatter of expansion right now. But someone threw out that, the NHL is going to want to get to 36 teams at some point here in the not-so-distant future. What do you think of the idea of the league going all the way to 36 teams?
It's a lot. I guess the player in me, I love it because then it's more jobs. It's more guys being able to get jobs. And for a guy, for me, who was on the outside looking in at times, right, there's only so many seats at the table, which I do love. But in a league that lacks superstars to begin with, when we look at a lot of these teams and we can say they just don't have the superstar firepower compared to the Edmonton, the Vegas, the Torontos, it's going to get even more watered down in that sense. So I feel like the brand starts to hurt in that sense. But for players, for the union, for everything involved, I love it. More teams, more paychecks, more guys in the league.
All right, let's get to our daily bets for the day. They're brought to you by Bet365. Download the app today. Use the code NATION as we'll bring in our boy Pat Puff. And, I'm looking at a nice win for Pat. Kane's on the puck line yesterday. Austin Matthews, he cleared 4 shots easily. Hutts. What's going on?
That was my pick. I don't remember. I must have blacked out during that section of the show.
You missed by 1 goal for the over between Tampa and Carolina. You're gonna have to make a sacrifice or something like that to get yourself on the rails here early in the season. And I say that only being 1 win ahead of you. But let's get to our picks for today. Hutz, we'll let you lead the way and go first.
We just touched on them with Steve. I'm going with the Utah Mammoth puck line at home against the Calgary Flames. Cooley's getting the start. The Flames fans' worst nightmare. It's not Dustin Wolf. It's not Dan Vladar. It's Cooley getting the start and net for the Calgary Flames. So I look for the Utah Mammoth at home to answer with a big, big game tonight.
I like that one, actually. Again, Calgary yesterday blew a 2-0 lead to the Golden Knights, lost on home ice. Pat, what do you like tonight?
Well, you asked if anyone was going to bet on Buffalo, and we can't do that, but we can bet on Tage Thompson. His shot prop 3.5. He's hit that in all 3 of their games this season with 4, 8, and 5. So at plus 100 for 3.5, I really like that one. Tage has got to heat up at some point. He's got 1 goal, but we know Tage is better than that.
Yeah. And I think he's one of those guys too, Hutz, who you can tell he's frustrated. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if he kind of comes into this game and is like, if I got to do it myself, I'll do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a shooter. He shoots from everywhere. And again, this is a big game, I think, for both these teams, just for a fan base, for everything involved. And he's a star. And I think tonight he will be shooting the puck. So I like that bet, Patty.
All right, I'm going same game parlay. DeBrincat and Reinhart, they have each hit 3+ in all 3 of their games so far this season. Playing them together tonight gets you a plus 190. Payouts, so those are our picks brought to you by Bet365. We'll wrap things up with a little bit of garbage time. And listen, Hutz, nobody does the tribute stuff, the pregame ceremony stuff better than the Montreal Canadiens. And it's a bit of a sad note, obviously, with the passing of Ken Dryden. But I thought this was just awesome. Having his goalie mask resting on the net with the spotlight, having a bunch of his former teammates in attendance as well. The ovation from the Bell Center was electric. So again, sad on the Ken Dryden front, but this tribute from the Habs was beautiful.
Yeah, it was top notch. And again, Montreal always does things right when it's about hockey and the history of the game and honoring, the past. And I think something, obviously Ken Dryden was a big impact on Montreal and hockey in general across Canada. And as a goalie myself, a guy that paved the road for, many of us. So, it's pretty awesome to see this last night. They did it up well. I saw the nice little touch. Patrick Laine had the 2-9 in his helmet, in his hat, walking in with the card. So, I think everybody was there to honor him. It was a great event last night at the Bell Center.
And speaking of, or staying on this topic a little bit, obviously Bernie Perron also passed away over the offseason. And I don't know if you saw, but the Flyers, their player of the game reward in the locker room now is they have one of his old helmets. So their player of the game gets the old school goalie helmet. I thought that was a cool way to honor Bernie as well.
Yeah, it's sweet. I think that's a great idea, especially these historic franchises, right, that have had so many legends come through there, a way to honor. And the player of the game is such a unique thing. And what I do love about the player game now is it's very open to the public with social media, where before everything was behind closed doors. I feel like it really brings your fans, closer to your team when you get to see behind the closed doors.
All right, that is a wrap on today's edition. Tomorrow, Insider Talk with David Pagnota. Maybe we'll save all your Sabres questions for them, but have a good Wednesday, everybody. We'll see you right back here tomorrow at noon Eastern. Hey, hockey fans, if you enjoyed that video, then make sure you hit the subscribe button right here on the Daily Faceoff YouTube. We have you covered for everything you need. Exclusive interviews on The Sheet with Jeff Merrick, all the latest hockey news on Daily Faceoff Live, and you can always get your morning started with Johnny Lazarus and Colby Cohn on Morning Cup of Hockey. Don't miss a minute. Hit that subscribe button.